Now, I do have to shift gears a little bit here, Ian, just while I have you. I don't have a ton of British friends. But speaking of the Brits, is something that's really bothering me. It's bothering me more, maybe even than censoring the President of the United States. Namely, there's this idea floated that there is going to be a woman James Bond. Now, look, I'm no expert. I guess I don't know your culture as well as I thought I did. But I always thought James is a man's name, and that James Bond is a man. Am I mistaken?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's clearly a male character. It's been a male character if you look at the books and the movies, and also just personality-wise and characteristic-wise, it is a male character. And just the attempt to make James Bond woke when he's possibly one of the least woke characters in sort of British literature and sort of action theme, I think is really pretty appalling. I don't think it's going to happen though. That's the one thing I'm clinging to is the fact that the families involved in James Bond basically said this won't happen. So I'm really hoping they stand firm against the pressure to do so, because it will ruin the franchise. I think it's quite clear if they do so, it just won't be enjoyable, because people enjoy characters for the realistic aspect, but also because they see certain characteristics in men and women differently. And I think the attempt just to dilute a character simply to make gender the theme would be ridiculous. I mean, I don't know where to start, but just, for example, the fact that James Bond can seduce anyone he wants, and then to make a woman do the same thing. It's not the same. Like, I'm sorry to blow people's minds, but a man convincing anyone to sleep with him is not the same as a woman convincing any man to sleep with him. Like, it's a very, very different standard people are playing with it. So the movie wouldn't be that much fun, I don't think.
Yes, Janine Bond, or whatever they name her. It's like, wow, she can walk into a room and all the guys want to sleep with her. That sets her in exactly the same place as every other woman in the history of the world. Okay, wow, we've got you. Of course, I mean, there is this radical program to deny that men and women are different. And it goes back a long way. People think this began with the transgender movement, but it didn't. The minute that Gloria Steinem said, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, the minute the second wave feminists came out and said that men and women are the same and that the only differences are superficial and fixable, you had this idea. And that led, I think, inexorably to redefining marriage. Because if M equals W, then, if man equals woman, then M plus W necessarily equals M plus M or W plus W, right? If men and women are indiscernible, then sure, then two men certainly can be married, and there's nothing logically inconsistent about that. And if men and women are indistinguishable, then a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. And in fact, to say that there is a man and a woman is meaningless, because I was reliably informed they're the same thing.
I mean, it's all so ridiculous. What I also find sort of interesting and somewhat ironic is that James Bond isn't a good character. Like, people often look at him as a hero. He's not. He's almost an anti-hero in a way. He's a lot of the good characteristics of men and also the bad characteristics. He's violent, but he uses violence well, but sometimes he uses violence badly. He treats a lot of women terribly, especially if you look at the older movies, for example. I do think it's somewhat ironic that people don't see that this can be a character that expresses the good qualities of men, the bad qualities of men, almost the battle between the two, which is a very complex idea that I think we need to be addressing, especially for a lot of young men in today's society who are basically being told that their masculinity is a bad thing entirely.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of positive things that can come from James Bond beyond just the fun of the books or the fun of the movies. I think it's a very important character for a lot of people to understand.
Right.
And just the erasure of gender entirely, as you said, just goes through our entire culture, and it has very, very dangerous outcomes, because there are a lot of men, a lot of women who won't embrace the good things about their fundamental gender, with really disastrous results, I think.
Right. The only thing I disagree with a little is I do think he's still a good guy. I still think, that battle is there between his baser instincts and then his higher motivations. And you really see this expressed in how James Bond breaks the rules, right? He's supposed to follow certain rules, but he often breaks those rules. But I think this is kind of the brilliance of the franchise, is that guy, he could have been a gangster, and he would have been a great gangster, but he channels what is that raw, he's as masculine a character as we have in our era, and he channels that for the service of king and country, right? I mean, he channels that for a good cause, and yet, as you point out today, we can't really distinguish. We can't distinguish between men and women, and we certainly can't distinguish between good and bad, and so much of what we try to do to these movies and to our narratives is to just confuse the two. But I totally agree with you that if we have a woman James Bond, I think it's going to do about as well as the all-woman Ghostbusters did. Which is, did you see that movie? I have not.
I haven't. I watched Ocean's 8, though, which I think was, I mean, they couldn't even get 11 women who could have starred in it, which I think says everything you need to know about it. But that was awful. I think it also does a disservice to women. I think there are some phenomenal female characters in literature and movies. Right. But just the laziness of taking a successful male character and just thinking you can flip the gender and it's going to be equally successful, I think is a disservice to women.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. But it's the same disservice the feminists did, which is to say, if you want to have any value in your life, women, you just have to act like men. Completely insane. Ian Howarth, go find him at the Daily Wire. Go follow his show. Follow him. I've got 5 seconds left, Ian. Where can they follow you on Twitter?
Oh, just IGHAWORTH.
That's very easy.